Hi there, grief growers. I am so glad you decided to tune in today. I'm taking a break from full-length podcasting right now and gearing up for Season 5 of Coming Back, which premieres on January 2nd, 2019. But in the meantime, I wanted to share with you a few insights and stories from my life after loss. Normally for these In the Meantime episodes, I'll share bonus clips from this season's guests on Coming Back, but in Season 4, you received every single bit of the conversations I had with our Bereavement Cruise presenters. So for this In the Meantime podcast break, I'll be sharing with you some memories and stories about my own personal grief experience, and I hope they resonate with you in some way. This week, I want to talk about the connection between grief and our bodies. If you listened to my In the Meantime episode a few weeks ago, you probably heard some scratchiness in my voice, some lower register going on, if you will. And lucky for you, grief growers, I edited out a good majority of the recording where I was clearing my throat, or coughing, or I got a good sneeze in there too. I was battling what I have come to know, fondly, as my annual holiday sinus infection /cold/flu. I'm recovered now, you can hear it in my voice, but it is fascinating and interesting and terribly annoying to me that I always seem to get sick this time of year. Getting sick around the holidays was not always my reality. As a kid, I had bronchitis every couple of years or so, but never at a consistent time. Of course, like most of you listening, I've battled pink eye, the flu, and the common cold more than once in my life. Getting sick is a part of being human. It's kind of the price of admission for walking around on the planet and interacting with other humans and all that. But sickness, illness for me was never quote unquote like clockwork until after my mom died in 2013. And for the past 5 years, around this time of year, between Thanksgiving and Christmas, I always seem to come down with something. Not only does my body feel tired and get aches and pains more often and just generally feel unwell, I get a full-blown something that knocks me on my butt for a solid 72 hours. I've come to understand, as time has gone on and as I've continued to experience this, that sickness for me is literally my body remembering and playing out my emotional and physical collapse when I lost my mom. It's repeating that in real time. My body gets sick and stops me from moving around too much and reminds me, it says, hey, this time of year really sucked that one time, didn't it? And feeling horrible and weak, plus the cold weather outside and the holiday decorations going up, all conspire to create this perfect storm replica of the environment that I was in when my mom died. To kind of top it all off, I also miss my mom horrendously when I'm sick. So getting a cold or a sinus infection or the flu this time of year really, it hurts my heart. It makes me ache for her in ways that I don't normally the other 10 months of the year. I consider myself a pretty self-sufficient person for being 26 years old, and to be sick, to be ill, drops me back into those first days where I was immediately after she died, where I needed someone to take care of me. I had lost my caretaker. And this ache, this yearning for my mom is not quite as strong as the day she died, but it's kind of like this really powerful aftershock that's coming years later that says, yeah, we're still not totally 100% healed from this, are we? It still hurts. We wish that she was still here. If you're anything like me, and you've experienced physical illness in the aftermath of loss, I want to recommend a book to you. I haven't personally read it yet, but it's on my list, and I keep hearing wonderful, wonderful things about it, and it's actually been recommended by several of our podcast guests here on Coming Back, so I feel very, very safe recommending it to you today. It's a book called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, MD. It is a scientific collection of studies and stories on how things like PTSD, being raised by alcoholic parents, being sexually assaulted or continually molested, or being a survivor of physical violence literally changes our DNA and changes our bodies. Our experience in life, including grief and loss, have a tremendous power, often more credit than we give them, to shape our bodies and our physicality and how well, health-wise, we are in the years that follow trauma. Grief literally affects our physical health, and kind of like my experience, can result in aftershocks even years after the trauma occurs. Two books that I have read that I would also like to recommend are Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life and, of course, the Grief Recovery Method Handbook. You Can Heal Your Life is more of a spiritual and metaphysical book and actually pairs up parts of the body with emotional or spiritual ailments. So things like a sore throat can represent stifled anger or feeling like you don't have a voice. A cold can often represent having too much going on at once or burning the candle at both ends. Shoulder pain or back pain is literally carrying the energetic weight of the world on your shoulders. So kind of things in that realm. And I don't subscribe to Louise Hay's energetic pairings with the body 100% of the time because I know that it takes more than spirituality and energy for illness to manifest, and I never want to come from a blame the victim standpoint, like if you're always energetically in balance, you'll never be sick, because I don't believe that to be true. But being an intuitive that works with energy through Reiki and meditation and other means, it's a really interesting look at how our bodies energetically thrive or flounder in different circumstances. The other book I want to recommend is, of course, the Grief Recovery Method Handbook, which is my favorite book for coping with grief and the book that was kind of the light bulb moment for me. It covers a wide array of losses, including loss of health or loss of physical ability. Throughout the book, the Grief Recovery Method Handbook's authors, John and Russell, talk about the effects grief has on energy levels, on concentration in the body. And when I personally went through the Grief Recovery Method class to actually work on the loss of my mother, we had a special moment with our instructor to acknowledge the accidents and illnesses that have affected us in the aftermath of our losses. So things like falling and breaking an arm, or being diagnosed with a heart problem, or a minor fender bender while driving. And yes, continuing to get sick at the same time of year our loved ones died. Grief growers, it is so normal for our bodies to remember and to hold on to the things that have happened to us in our lives, both good and bad. We're kind of like walking, talking timelines that count the days and mark the events with every single heartbeat. Our bodies are not immune to what happens around us. For as much as people try and separate the heart and the mind and the body, they're all very, very much connected. Our bodies are not shielded from our heartache. In fact, oftentimes our bodies are the very first things to register our pain. And so they really, really remember it. I am sending so much love your way, whether your body is sick or well, grief growers, or somewhere in between. I hope you enjoyed this In the Meantime episode of Coming Back. Stay tuned for more insights, stories, and permissions in the weeks between now and the Season 5 launch in January. To receive additional grief support beyond this podcast, I would love if you'd consider supporting Coming Back on Patreon. All patrons are invited to join me live for my next hour-long Google Hangout, where I'm sharing stories, resources, and advice for coping with life after loss. That's coming up this Monday, December 17th at 8 o'clock p.m. So if you'd like to join us, pledge before then. And, of course, whenever you pledge before New Year's Day 2019, you are also automatically entered to win my In the Meantime giveaway. Anyone who's a patron of Coming Back by December 31st, 2018 is automatically entered to win 2 copies of the grief book that totally changed my life. I mentioned it earlier, the Grief Recovery Method Handbook. In addition to 2 copies of this book that I will send your way, I will also send along a set of Coming Back podcast stickers and a handwritten thank you note straight from my desk. You can find a link to my Patreon page where you can pledge and enter to win for as little as $1 per month in the show notes. You can also find a link to my Patreon page by visiting my website, which is shelbyforsythia.com. Check out episode 64 of Coming Back if you'd like to hear more about the details of the Patreon giveaway and all the places I'll be between now and Season 5 of Coming Back. That's all I've got for you for this episode of Coming Back. In the meantime, I can't wait to return to you with full-length episodes in January. While I'm away from the mic, you can find updates on me, this podcast, and my mini adventures on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and some extra behind-the-scenes stuff on Patreon. If you'd like to leave a question, comment, or guest suggestion for a future episode, leave a voicemail or text 312-725-3043 or email me at shelby@shelbyforsythia.com. As always, my dear grief growers, it was beautiful sharing this space and time with you today. I see you, I am proud of you and the work that you're doing in the world, and I love you. Because even through grief, we are growing.